Well, hello everyone. I see a few people have already joined. My lovely daughter-in-law Rebecca is there, and I'm sure Brian's with her. Keith Ryan brought a few more people, and is always checking out to see how this all looks. So a little chit chat before we actually get going. I just uploaded. I'm really excited. I just uploaded a video on how to conduct a proper tasting on YouTube. I filmed it today. Hope you love it. Watch it. It's about 20 some odd minutes long. Walks you through how I teach people how to taste. So it's kind of cool. I'm really excited about it. And it's one of the things that I'm hoping to use as we drive more into the online businesses to help people to understand how to actually sit down and taste beer and evaluate beer. Hello, Craig. Welcome back. It's nice to see the same people. And I know Keith's got a few more people that he invited in as well. So all excellent. Craig's got a nice little cheers. What do you call those? Emoticons. Sorry, showing my age. But we've got something special tonight, as always, and something really special next week. So I'll get into that in a little while. It's been an interesting week so far. I know that with all the heat, I think people are really wanting to get outside. It's kind of nice out, and here we are stuck in Rogers Bar area waiting to do another video. So I've got lots of stories to tell you tonight about Trappist breweries, and especially the Trappists and Cistercians. I'm seeing some really cool and interesting things. I had a nice chat with Peter Bullitt from Great Lakes Brewery this week, and they're actually doing quite well. I think that they're not doing as robustly as they might have predicted a long time ago. But Peter's a really good entrepreneur, and he was sitting on a ton of kegs, and because the hospitality industry has basically collapsed over the last 3 months or so, Peter didn't really know what to do with the kegs. So he called up Muskoka Brewery. Hello, Lucille. Welcome. He called up Muskoka Brewery, and Todd Lewin is just a wonderful person. He's the president and CEO of Muskoka. And hello, Harold. Oh man, you got a lot of good choices there. I would do La Trappe, but that's just me. Westmahl's pretty good as well. La Fin de Monde works as well. Who's got a Saint Foyen? That's a wonderful beer. Anyway, hello, Wes. So Peter phoned up Todd Lewin and knew that Muskoka had a still up there, and asked if he could borrow the still, and Todd said absolutely. So Peter brought the still in, started figuring out how to actually make spirits, and has converted the excess beer that he probably would have just dumped into hand sanitizer, which is really good in our current situation. So Peter's a pretty good friend of mine, and goes back into the early days when I first started my business back in 2005. And I'm just thrilled that he's been able to sort of work his way through this. We're a few minutes in now, so I think it's fair to say that it's time to get a beer into our hands, and I know a few people will be working on it. So the beer I'm featuring tonight is La Trappe Tripel. This comes in a 750 ml bottle, and so in accordance with the way that we poured last week, one of the things I'm going to do is invert it and just gradually rotate it, because this is a really big bottle for one person. I mean, I can easily work my way through this in an evening, but I have a young lady upstairs who would be happy to share. Hello, Paul Locke, signing in from stormy Grand Bend. Well, that's very nice. At least you're up there. That's a good thing. So again, just to reiterate, the reason I'm turning it is because there's all this good, yummy sediment on the bottom that's actually going to add a little bit of body, reduce some of the intensity of this type of beer, and give me this really nice cloudiness. So before I pour, I'm going to basically have a little chat about glassware with you. So if you looked at my picture that we posted, or if you go onto the La Trappe website, they'll show a goblet that is very, very similar to this one, except it's a lot flatter. It looks like a champagne glass, an old style champagne glass. And that's the glass that La Trappe has chosen. A lot of it has to do with that it is a monastic beer, but that's not the glass that I would choose. And so I'm going to show you the glass that I would choose and explain why. So this is a glass that I received from Unibrew quite a few years ago. This is a glass that I love to put La Fin du Monde in. And it's a fabulous glass. It's got the same kind of shape that a goblet would have, except it narrows up and flares out. So I get all this real soft characteristics in here in the body of the glass, and then it tightens everything up and keeps the foam really nice and intact. But the thing about triples is they don't have a ton of complexity to them. And so you don't need a big wide open mouth glass. Who else has just signed in? Craig's there drinking a Chimay White. That's a really good one as well. I couldn't blame you for drinking Chimay. I find it's a little bit more intense. I think over the years, I've really started to feel that La Trappe is my favorite of all the triples, taking into consideration that Unibrew's La Fin du Monde is probably even more a favorite. But this is just soft and delicate. It's got some really cool smells to it. So as I did last week, it's time for me to pour a glass for Anne so that she can sit back and enjoy it as well. Cheers, Annie.
Thanks, Lou.
You're welcome.
Cheers.
All right, now to me. And then obviously I get the rest because the 750 is not going to fit in these two glasses. So one of the interesting things about Belgian triples is they are blonde in color. And this one has almost an apricot jam kind of look to it. It's very, very hazy because of the yeast in there. It's got this big white head, but the bubbles are really huge. And a lot of that comes from the high alcohol. So they're bursting like left, right, and center. So the head dissipates relatively quick on these styles of beers. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just an observation. But it's just got this beautiful, deep, rich color to it. I love it. It's almost like a fresh peach. If you think of a fresh Niagara peach. And when you smell, the aromatics and the flavors are pretty much driven by Belgian yeast cultures and not so much about malts or hops. Hops play a little bit of a role in a Belgian triple, so there is a little bit more bitterness in there than there would have been last week in the doubles. But when you smell into these, there's definitely that bubblegum and banana aromatic in there. There's probably a touch of spice, a little bit of clove perhaps, and a little bit of black or white pepper in there as well. And then gently, see, Wes is getting the bubblegum. And then gently, when you go back in, I want you to start noticing that there's probably some ripe fruit in there as well. So apple, pear. Yeah, it's just such a nice smell, and it's very refreshing. These are beers that you don't necessarily have to have at the temperatures that I was looking at before, like 15 to 17 degrees. These can actually be a little bit colder. So when you take a sip, you'll notice that it is bright and lively, and it dances on your mouth. It's just sparkles on the tip of your tongue. It's got a little bit, it doesn't really finish quickly. It's more of a medium to longer finish. Does have some aftertaste. It does have some bitterness associated with it, but that bitterness is really not unpleasant at all. It's there to sort of balance out some of the sweetness of a 8% ABV beer. I think this is 8. Let me just check. Yeah, 8%. This is one of those sneaky little Belgian beers or European beers that is at 8% alcohol by volume. And when you sip it, you go, oh, that's pretty easy to drink. And then you have a couple more sips, and then you're feeling like, well, that's going to affect me a little differently than just the Pilsner I was drinking a few hours ago. These are great beers to open up because they become a little bit more fruity. Yeah, lots of stone fruit in here. You might get a little bit more peach and apricot in the tastes. A lot of the bubblegum characteristics in the flavor profile are gone because those are really only aromatics that are derived from Belgian yeast strains. But again, pretty smooth and easy to drink. It is a little boozy, so it's got a little bit of a warming characteristic right in here. And it is a little bit more mouth coating. It's not as sweet as Belgian doubles, and that's what I really like about it. But I think this beer deserves a narrower glass, because I think it sparkles and shines a little bit more in the narrow glass than it does in the wide glass. And the same thing happens with champagne. If you put champagne into a flute, it's going to be bright and bubbly and sparkly and is going to be lively and thirst quenching. But if you put it into a bigger glass that's short and wide, then it's going to be softer. The CO2 is going to dissipate a lot quicker, and you're going to taste some more of the characteristic of what's in underneath that carbon dioxide. So as you're enjoying your Königshoven La Trappe, this is the largest of all the Trappist breweries in the world. It is located at the La Trappe Abbey in the Netherlands. And it has a very, very interesting history. But let me go to the style first. I think I alluded to this last week that that Westmalle, the Westmalle Abbey, which is also part of the Trappist appellation, has been responsible for the naming conventions of both doubles and triples. And triples were first named in the 1930s by the Westmalle abbots and monks. And gradually, over time, it has become a naming convention where everybody who's doing these blonde, strong ales in Belgium is basically creating what Westmalle created with a triple. And when you look deep into the history, you can see that they were using pretty much triple the amount of ingredients that they would have been using in previous beers. So triple the fermentable sugars is typically what we're looking at. And the Belgian candy sugar is a big player in this. Hello, Vess. So Vess is just noticing that it has a champagne indent in the bottom of it. So I'm not going to tip it up because it'll end up on me. Thanks for pointing that out, Vess. So the Westmalle Abbey also responsible for the naming convention on triples, which is really kind of cool. Königshoven, the abbey itself, was built in 1884, and that particular abbey is in a place called La Trappe. And a lot of the abbeys take their names from the towns that they're built in. And I'm going to go back a little bit to discuss what the Trappist faith is. So initially, back at the Middle Ages, Benedict left the Roman Catholic Church, was uncomfortable with the corruption that was going on in the church, and wanted to create a non-secular society. And so walled the monks in, and they continued their religious work and their community work as well. So the Benedictines were viewed at that time to be of the strictest faith. So they took their vows very, very seriously. They studied, they did a lot of community work, they did a lot of labor. So it was one of sacrifice in the same way that Jesus would have done as he entered the wilderness. So gradually over time, the strict observance became less and less and less. And then in 1664, there was a reform in Northern Europe, and the reform resulted in the Cistercian faith. And the Cistercian faith, in this particular case, took place in La Trappe. And so the Trappists take their name because that is the origin of the Cistercian faith. The Cistercian is very, very much about strict observance, which means that they spend all their time in community work. They have a belief that they are not to vocalize unnecessary words. So they don't really have a vow of silence, but what they do is they speak only when necessary. And they feel that that's an important part. So part of the history of the Cistercians and La Trappe really comes from that La Trappe Abbey that's located in the Netherlands. So as we fast forward through, a really interesting situation came up, because initially, before the Trappist appellation was formatted, a lot of the brewers didn't want to do the work themselves or couldn't do the work themselves. So they actually licensed the brewing of the beer to others. And between 1969 and 1980, the Königshoven beer was licensed to the Artois family in Leuven, Belgium. And so the Artois were making Königshofen beers from 1969 to 1980, which is something that most people really wouldn't understand. And then gradually there was some repercussions against Königshofen, and so they were forced to take the brewing operations back in-house, where the monks actually did all the work. And then they, in the late 90s, early 2000s, they started to license the brand again, and this time to a very, very large Dutch brewer called Bavaria. So Bavaria SV is currently the brewing operations for the La Trappe brewery. So everything is brewed within the monastery walls to adhere to the regulations, but it is being managed by Bavaria SV brewers and brewing managers. So it's kind of interesting how everything sort of turns around. This, like I said, is one of my favorites. I'm going to have a discussion with a friend of mine who recently took over the distribution of this brand. And so it's quite fitting that I'm going to talk to Dean tomorrow a little bit more about it, because I think he was busy doing a few other things in the last few years, and now he's got himself back into the beer industry and back into representing certain brands. But this is a kind of, to me, this is a very unique beer. The head brewer for this beer actually left the Netherlands and came to work for Brunswick Beer Works in Toronto, and so he's behind a lot of the beers that are being brewed at Brunswick right now, and which is really kind of cool. So I will raise a glass to the Trappist breweries and to everybody in Belgium and Netherlands who's making great beers for us. So before I open it up to any questions, to see if you have any, I just want to, I think last week I indicated that I was going to be moving back into Germany in the next few sessions. So next week, what we are going to take a look at are Munich Helles, and really, really unique style, one of my favorite styles of all time. The brand I'm going to focus on is Hacker Pschorr Munich Gold. This to me is the gold standard of Helles. If you want to venture out and see if you can find it, this is a really good one called Benediktiner Helles. And if you feel like supporting the beer store, they have another one. I think some of the LCBOs have them as well, but there's another one called Ottakringer, which is from Vienna, and it's exceptional as well. There's lots of really good ones out in the market these days. So I am, as always, going to open it up for any questions from anybody to see whether there's something that you want to know. So far, not a thing, but that's okay. Vas randomly picked up the Benediktiner Helles today. Very nice. Good move on your part. I think you're going to love it. It's a fabulous Helles. I've got great stories about the Helles style and how it was created for next week. And as always, we're going to do this on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. And it is, I mean, tell your friends that they can go and check the video out anytime afterward, because it automatically uploads into my YouTube stream. So it's going to be sitting there right away. And as I also said, the whole segment on how to taste beer properly, it uploaded today. So I hope you enjoy it. I did a little bit of my own editing on it and filming. So not that I want to get into that side of the business, but it's there. Is there any style that anybody wants me to review over the next little while? Like, is there something that you want to know? Oh, have I tried Deus? I have. It's really, really hard to find. I'm sure I could pull some strings to go get it, but Deus is a really interesting beer. Wes has asked about it. It also comes in a champagne bottle because it is aged like champagne. So what Deus is Belgian Tripel that has been taken, shipped into Champagne, France, and then aged with champagne yeast like champagne. It is spectacular. It is a fantastic beer, but Typically, you can only find these things in restaurants. I'm not sure, Wes, whether you found yours in a restaurant or down in the States or how you came across it, but haven't seen them in the LCBO in a long time. Questions? No, nothing. Everybody's happy. The 8% alcohol's kicked in and nobody has any questions. Wes bought it at LCBO 2 years ago. Oh, that'll be excellent. Vienna lagers, that's good, Harold. I am going to do Vienna lagers probably in about 2 or 3 weeks. So the way I be looking into the future would be Helles next week, Schwarzbiers or black lagers the week after, then Vienna lagers, and then Craig. I will definitely get into IPAs in the following week. So that will be an interesting one. It may take a little longer than 20 minutes to do. So I'll definitely be doing IPAs, West Coast, East Coast, British. Keith, New Lang Syne is Beau's Tripel. And it is a little rough around the edges in year one, but if you can manage to keep it in year 2 and 3, it becomes really, really nice. I just find it a little edgy in the first year. Stouts, yeah, we'll definitely get into those. We'll get into all kinds of, I'm not sure I'm going to get into too much on lactic, but we can talk definitely about stouts and imperial stouts down the road. And I know, Bess, you'd be interested in Baltic porters. Oh, Rebecca Burke, Baltic porters. We'll definitely do porters. Baltic porters are a little tougher to come by. And the reason Bess is interested in Baltic porters is because he's from Latvia, and he sent me a message and suggested that I include Baltic porters in my programs, which I said I would. So now we're going to get into it. So Baltic porters are going to be in there. Stouts are going to be in there. You just have to bear with me. We can't get everything in at the same time. The IPA discussion is going to be an interesting one. I will guarantee you that. In fact, we probably won't just be doing one beer that time. I'll probably be doing 2 or 3 so that you can visually and aromatically and taste-wise taste the difference on those ones. So we'll do a little bit more expansion when we get to that. I'm probably going to start posting on Instagram some glassware or some beers and reverse it. So I might post a glass and say, what beer would you put into this glass? Or I might post a beer and say, this is the style, what glass would you choose for it and why? So I want to start driving the Instagram channel a little bit more, maybe on Facebook as well, so that we get a little bit more discussion going on back and forth, because I really, really miss having beer discussions with people. So I'm just absolutely loving being with you guys. So thank you very, very much. If there's no other questions, then I think I'm going to wrap it up. And I will, in the next day or so, post the beer that I'm looking for. So check out either my Facebook, so Prud'homme's Facebook, or our Instagram account, or my personal Instagram. Oh, excellent. Yeah. I think a lot of people are missing those beer discussions or basic discussions. I'll post it all over the place, what beers I'm actually going to do, and give you some suggestions on how you can taste along with the rest of us. So having said that, thank you very much. Thank you for joining me. Love being here with you, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Cheers.